Is it possible to heal from cirrhosis? My opinion? Absolutely. My name is Ellie, and my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cirrhosis. I'm not a medical doctor, and I can't give medical advice. I'm also not saying there is a cure for cirrhosis. Everything I'm saying in this video is my opinion, but it is my strong opinion. I absolutely do believe that for most people, it is possible for scar tissue to be reduced to the point where a person can lead a better life. Some people are able to reverse more scar tissue and therefore regain more liver function than others. It depends on what you do, what you don't do, and how early you get started. Again, this is my opinion, but it is my strong opinion based on what I've seen. Let me tell you about my husband. 3 years ago, he was diagnosed with end-stage liver disease. He was in bad shape. When your loved one has cirrhosis, you learn the hard way that things can go from bad to really, really bad very quickly. He had to be hospitalized 4 times, his MELD score was 28, he looked like a walking skeleton, and his skin was greenish, grayish yellow. He was extremely fatigued, and at one point he could barely walk. He became very crabby and agitated, and his sweet, funny personality seemed to have vanished. His skin itched to the point where it would bleed from scratching. He developed an umbilical hernia that was the size of a grapefruit. He looked like he was pregnant and about to give birth. He had 21 liters of fluid drained from his abdomen in 1 week. He crashed and totaled his car due to encephalopathy, and when I got to the hospital, he didn't even know who I was. During his second episode of encephalopathy, he went totally catatonic, and I think he actually got some brain damage due to the lack of oxygen. Luckily, it was minor, but it could have been much worse. His breath smelled like death, he developed osteoporosis, and he started losing his teeth. I used to have to check on him to make sure he was still breathing. Needless to say, he had to miss a lot of work because of all of this, and I had to take off time from work too. We learned that cirrhosis-related expenses can quickly tally up to over $250,000. Think that's a lot? That's nothing. I talked to a man who told me his cirrhosis cost him over $1 million over the course of his lifetime. Sadly, he passed away last year. These figures don't even include the cost of a transplant. The average cost of a transplant is $577,000, and it involves taking anti-rejection drugs, possibly for the rest of your life. Anti-rejection drugs cause a person to have a lowered immune system, which can make you feel fatigued, and they can cost $3,000 a month. I looked up the side effects of these drugs, and the list was long. Some of these drugs can increase your risk for diabetes and certain types of cancer. And some of these drugs can actually cause more scar tissue in your new liver. I read that the average 5-year survival rate was about 67%. My husband was led to believe that his only hope for recovery was a transplant, and that he would probably have to go on disability. He wasn't really keen on that idea, and neither was I. I refused to believe that cirrhosis couldn't be reversed. Like many people, we'd heard over and over again that scar tissue cannot be reversed. But there were a lot of things I'd heard over and over again in my lifetime that turned out not to be true. Years before my husband got sick, I had actually studied scar tissue, and I knew that external scar tissue could be reduced. If it can be reversed externally, why not internally? I did hundreds of hours of research looking for ways to help my husband, and I found over a dozen different supplements that are shown to help the liver to regenerate, and many others that are shown to reverse scar tissue. I saw medical studies that proved it is possible for scar tissue and fibrosis to be reduced. So we experimented with dozens of different supplements and alternative treatments, and my husband started getting better. His fluid retention went away, he no longer had to be drained, he was able to get his MELD score down to a 6, we were told this is as low as it can get, and he got off all his medications. Less than a year into his recovery, he could kick my butt going up 5 flights of stairs. A few months later, he could run a mile in just over 8.5 minutes with no training. Today, he can go on 12-mile hikes. It didn't take him long to get back to work, and earlier this year, he got a well-deserved promotion. And the best thing of all is that he is back to his funny, sweet self again. In January of 2016, he had a fibroscan. The maximum score is 75. The marker for cirrhosis is 12.5 or above. His score was 9.3. He has moved to stage 2. We do realize that he still has fibrosis, which we don't take lightly, but we were still pretty happy with his results. We are hoping that he can keep reversing more and more scar tissue by continuing to do what he's been doing. Now, was it just a coincidence that he got the results that he did? I don't think so. There had to be some explanation as to why he got better. The question is, what did it? I have a lot of theories as to why the things my husband did seemed to help him so much, and they boil down to some pretty simple principles. Your body is basically an amazing, extremely well-designed plumbing system, and having a cirrhotic liver is like having a clogged drain. Have you ever walked into a public bathroom and seen a toilet that you were scared to flush? Because you can see it's clogged and you get the feeling that if you flushed it, nothing would happen, or worse yet, it would overflow. Maybe you do try to do a test flush to see what happens. And then you watch as the water just kind of spins around a little, but it doesn't actually go down. Or worse yet, the water and sewage might even start to rise because there's a major clog in the drain. That is basically what is happening when a person gets cirrhosis. Jerry Seinfeld says the most frightening moment in the life of a human being is when you go to a party and flush the toilet and the water starts to rise. But I'm sure many people reading this would agree that a more frightening scenario is when the fluid in your own body starts to rise, and there seems to be no way to get it to go back down. When liquid can't go through a plumbing system, it backs up. And unless you do something to get rid of the clog, it is unlikely that the blockage will go away on its own. In my opinion, based on what I've seen, the liver can be unclogged, much like a drain. At least it can be unclogged to the point where fluid can start to go down again. Every good plumbing system also has a good filtration system, and there is no filtration system in the entire world that is more incredible than the one in your own body, your liver. We all know that the lungs and the kidneys are very important filters, but the liver is the body's largest filter by weight. And it's also one of your most important organs, performing over 500 functions. It's so important, as you probably know, it's the one organ that regenerates. But it works silently in the background, so we never even have to think about it. Your liver is a lot like the garbage man that takes away the trash every week. Many people take the garbage man for granted because he usually just does his job and the trash goes away and you barely even have to think about it. But if he stops working or goes on strike, you will soon realize just how important he really is. The liver also acts like one of those mesh wire screens you put over the tub drain to keep hair from clogging your pipes. When you wash your hair and it starts falling down the drain so the filter becomes clogged, you'll find yourself standing in an inch of water. Your liver is the filter in your plumbing system that your blood must pass through, but if it's blocked, then everything will start to back up. This is what causes ascites, edema, portal hypertension, and bleeding varices. Imagine you're holding a balloon you just took out of a package. Not a round balloon, but one of those long, skinny ones that are shaped like a hot dog. Imagine you cut off the end, stretched it over the nozzle of a hose, and then turned the water on. The water would just keep flowing through the balloon, just like blood runs through your veins, and nothing unusual would happen. Now, imagine tying a knot at the end of the balloon with the hose still running. What would happen now? That balloon would start to bulge, and eventually it would burst. That's basically what happens to your veins when you get bleeding varices. Your blood is supposed to go through your veins and not have to stop when it gets to the liver because it can't get through a clog. Because the clog creates an end point, your body's fluids will start to back up. Your veins are not meant to handle that kind of pressure, so they can burst if there's a blockage. Many people with cirrhosis have bled to death because of this. Proton pump inhibitors are often prescribed to fix this issue, but this does nothing to unclog the liver, and as a matter of fact, they actually create more scar tissue. Antibiotics often cause more scar tissue as well. I am not saying don't ever take either of these, but you should be aware of all side effects as well as all your options. Your blood is supposed to keep circulating and passing through your liver to help keep it clean and healthy. But if your liver is clogged, your bloodstream will become like a toxic, slow-moving river of poisons in your body that can't be drained. My theory, based on what I've seen in the last 2 years, is that it is possible for many people to unclog the liver just enough so that you can get blood running through it again. If you can keep your blood from backing up, you can reduce your risk for portal hypertension and therefore for bleeding varices. And if you can remove toxins that have been trapped in your body, you can reduce even more symptoms of cirrhosis. The liver is normally able to produce powerful defense mechanisms that can help keep you from getting sick and slow down the aging process. But when your liver can't function properly, you lose that protection. The body becomes like an avocado that's been cut open and is rapidly starting to deteriorate. This is part of the reason why a person with cirrhosis can look like they've aged 20 years in 6 months. Toxins like ammonia, which can't be eliminated from the bloodstream, can cause permanent damage to body tissues and can literally start poisoning you to death. But if you can start to heal your liver, you can start producing your own defense mechanisms again and eliminate those toxins. I don't want to give you false hope because cirrhosis is an extremely serious and often fatal disease that kills 25,000 people per year in the United States alone. But in my opinion, that number is way too high. I truly believe that that number would be a lot lower if people knew there were things that are shown to reverse fibrosis and scar tissue, and they could start healing their livers sooner than later. But many people assume that scar tissue can't be reversed simply because it's something they've heard over and over again. Well, one of the biggest lessons I've learned in life is that just because you hear something over and over again, that doesn't make it true. I was one of those people who used to believe just about everything I heard over and over again, until I learned to use critical thinking. You know how I said your liver is a really important filter? Well, there's another filter you have that is just as important. It's your brain. When it comes to your own body, it is not just your right, but your responsibility to filter and evaluate all the information you are being given. You owe it to yourself and your family to ask yourself, is this really my best option? There is a ton of information out there on how to heal from cirrhosis, but you have to look for it. We experimented with dozens of supplements and alternative treatments in order to discover what worked and what did not. My poor husband was like a human guinea pig. Some things even made him feel sick. But luckily, through a lot of trial and error, we were able to find many things that really did seem to work. This cost us a lot of money because we had to experiment with so many different supplements and treatments over the course of a few years. And the research was so time-consuming, I wasn't able to go back to work full-time. I was spending over 40 hours a week looking up alternative treatments instead of earning a paycheck. But I had to find something that worked for my husband because I felt like his life depended on it. When I found things that worked, I kept thinking, it shouldn't have been this difficult and expensive to learn what worked. How come I couldn't find everything I needed to know in one place? Well, as my mom used to say, if you want something done, do it yourself. So I created a blog to share what I was learning and to try to give hope to people who were going through what we'd been through. I remember all too well that when I was looking for a way to reverse cirrhosis, hope was in short supply. When I found something that worked, it seemed like it would be a waste to just keep the information to myself when I knew there had to be other people out there who were just like me, looking for ways to help their loved ones. People started to contact me, and many of them started getting similar results with their loved ones or themselves. Some people had even better results than my husband did because they were able to apply these methods sooner than we were able to. I sure wish somebody could have told us what worked 3 years ago. We would give just about anything to be able to go back in time and have this information when we really needed it. Since my husband took a slower route to recovery, not knowing all the options that were available yet, he was essentially walking around with a mostly clogged liver for a whole year. Because of this, his body was still being subjected to a lot of rapid cell damage during that first year of his recovery. It was as if he was slowly being poisoned by the toxins that couldn't be eliminated. A cirrhotic liver cannot process calcium properly, and he suffered from massive bone loss, lost several teeth, and shrank 3 inches. I recently found out that cirrhosis can even damage your DNA, so the long-term effects can be permanent. But those things aside, I do know how fortunate we are that he survived, he is healthy, and he's doing really well overall. About 68 people die from cirrhosis every day in the US alone. He easily could have been one of them. My mom used to say, it's good to learn from your mistakes, but it's even better to learn from other people's mistakes. So I hope you will be able to learn from our mistakes. But more importantly, I hope you will benefit from learning what worked for us. If and when you do, I hope you will pay it forward by sharing what you've learned with at least one other person who needs to know. If you go to my blog, you'll be able to see a lot of the research I've done in the last 3 years. And you'll be able to learn why I absolutely, positively do believe it is possible to heal from cirrhosis. Again, that is my opinion, but it is my strong opinion. Keep in mind that my husband was so sick, his MELD score was 28. He had 21 liters of fluid drain in 1 week, and he was told he would need a transplant. Today, he is back to work. He can hike 12 miles with his son, run a mile in about 8.5 minutes. His MELD score is down to a 6, and his FibroScan reading shows he is out of the cirrhosis phase. And I am so grateful that he is back to his sweet, funny self again. If he could heal from cirrhosis, I can't help but think that there's got to be hope for you too. Want to know what we did? Here is my website. To see our story and get a good idea of what cirrhosis will do to you if it keeps progressing, go to quitwhileyou'reahead.org. For everything else, go to healinglivercirrhosis.com. I've spoken with hundreds of people with cirrhosis and love talking to new people because I learn so many new things this way. So if you do get in touch, I look forward to speaking with you. Wishing you great success in your journey back to health.